Right, children? Now we are going to start the next chapter of this lesson. So what are we going to learn in this chapter? Natural disasters occur due to climatic changes. Now we all know that different atmospheric changes, factors change and it causes weather and climate, right? So what are these factors, children? Temperature, rainfall, the speed of the wind, humidity likewise. Sometimes when these factors extremely change, natural disasters could occur. Right, children? So natural disasters occur due to climatic changes. When climate changes drastically, these type of natural disasters occur. So what are the natural disasters that we are going to learn about? First, we are going to learn about cyclones. What is the meaning of a cyclone, children? A cyclone is a destructive type of wind. Now, even earlier lessons, we have discussed how wind is formed. Do you remember that, children? Now, when you consider different areas of the earth, children, during the daytime, because of the sun's heat, different areas of the earth gets heated up at different levels. Okay, let's say that if this is the earth, if this is the ground, because of sunlight, some areas get heated up faster than the other areas. Let's say that if this area gets heated up faster, now this area is, the temperature is very high, right? So when the earth gets heated up, the air layers present next to the earth also gets heated up because of the heat of the earth. Now let's say that the air layer, air particles present in this place also gets heated up. Remember, children, we have already learned this, the formation of wind in the previous lessons as well. Now remember, when the air particles get heated up, they become lighter. Their density reduces and the air particles become lighter. You all know that the light air goes up, the light air rises. When this light air rises, what happens, children? A depression or a low pressure air is created here, right? The air particles which was present here go up and therefore a low pressure zone is created here. But when you compare with the surrounding air layers, their pressure is higher than that of this part, this area, right? So then what happens? To make the air pressure equal in all the areas, this high pressure air flows from these areas to these low pressure areas, right? This moving air is known as wind. Moving air is known as wind. This is how wind is formed as a result of the sun's heat. Okay, children? Now, what is a cyclone, children? So, sometimes when this, because of many other reasons, sometimes this air pressure reduces too much, right? The air pressure of a certain zone reduces too much, and then what happens, children? The other surrounding air flows at very high speed, and this is known as a cyclone. Okay, children? We'll go through this. Wind is a very important factor in determining the weather. Although wind is very important to us, sometimes it causes disasters, right? The occurrence of cyclone is one such disaster. The cyclone occurs when the pressure in some areas decreases compared to other areas of the atmosphere, right? A cyclone occurs when the pressure in some areas highly decreases compared to other areas of the atmosphere. Right, children? A pressure depression is created in a place with low pressure. This type of area, like air pressure, is reduced. What is the meaning of air pressure, children? How does this occur? Remember, when more air particles present, air pressure is high. When less amount of air particles present, air pressure is low. So here what happens? When the air particles get heated up, they become lighter and they go up. Therefore, the amount of air particles present in a particular area reduces, which means that area becomes a low pressure zone. right? So I told y'all, if more air particles present, air pressure is high. When less amount of air particles present, we call it low pressure zones, right? So this area becomes low pressure. So from the high pressure area, air flows towards the low pressure zone. So if this becomes at high speed, a very high speed, it can be called a cyclone, okay? A pressure depression is created in a place with low pressure. Then air around that place is blown at a very high speed, right? A very high speed towards the pressure depression, right? The low pressure area is known as pressure depression area, right? Pressure depression. Okay? So then the air around that place is blown at a very high speed towards the pressure depression, and this type of air at high speed is very destructive, and this is known as a cyclone. This causes a cyclone. Okay, children? So here look at this. This is a satellite picture of a cyclone. So if you observe carefully, you can see this area. This is India, Sri Lanka. This area is called the Bay of Bengal, right? Okay, we'll move on to the next. Most of the cyclones that affect our country originate in the Bay of Bengal. Bay of Bengal, right? So what is the Bay of Bengal, children? So now you all know, this is, if I draw like this is India. This is where the Sri Lanka is present. This area is known as the Bay of Bengal, right? Bay of Bengal. So most of the time, pressure depressions, the cyclones, the air pressure reductions occur in this area affects our country. Right, children? So rain with storms. We'll go through what are the harmful effects. Rain with storms, huge sea waves, and thunderbolts occurs due to cyclones, right? The destruction of lives and property caused by cyclones is very high. So remember, children, so according to the place where these cyclones take place, we can give them different names. For example, if a certain cyclone takes place, occurs in Atlantic region or Northeast Pacific regions, we call them hurricanes. And at the same time, if a cyclone occurs in Northwest Pacific regions, we call them a typhoon. Likewise. Okay, children? Right. So the meteorological department is alert about cyclones 24 hours a day. As it is equipped with high technological instruments, it has the ability to warn about a cyclone within 48 hours. Okay, so they can understand if a cyclone is going to come. Therefore, they want the people to stay indoors, right? To prevent the harmful situations. Okay, you can get details about cyclones on this number or from their website. Okay, children. So we are going to watch a video clip on cyclones now. Right, children. So after watching the video clip, I hope you understood more about cyclones. We'll move on to the next. So the second natural disaster is floods, right? So we'll go through this. Rain is a major factor that determines the weather. As Sri Lanka is an agricultural country, rain is very important for us, right? So that's why we have to collect rainwater in tanks and use them for agriculture, okay? But heavy rains may cause disasters. Due to heavy rains, streams, rivers, reservoirs are filled with a huge amount of water in a very short time period and they overflow, right? So as a result of this, a large area of land is temporarily covered with water and this is known as a flood. So what happens, children? Due to heavy rains, all the water bodies get filled with water. So if it is too much, if the rain is very heavy, all the water bodies will filled with water, and then what happens? At one point they will overflow, causing harms to the other surrounding areas, and this is known as floods. Okay, children. So the main reason behind the occurrence of floods is heavy rains. Okay. Now we are going to watch a video clip on floods. Right, children. So you watch the video on floods. We'll go through this again, right? So this is known as a flood. Although a flood is a natural disaster, it can cause greater damage, right? Loss of lives, loss of properties, likewise. A flood can occur due to human activities such as reclamation of lands. What is the meaning of reclamation of lands, children? Refilling the lands. So sometimes those lowland areas, what happens? People, when they want to make constructions, those lowland areas, they refill with soil, right? Let's say this is the lowland area, right? So normally when it rains, what happens? This rainwater flows through the lowland areas to the rivers and then finally to the ocean, right? But what will happen if people refill these type of lowland areas and take the level of the land towards the normal level of the land? What will happen, children? Then the path of the rainwater, right now the rainwater falls through these type of lowland areas and nicely go to the rivers, right? But if we refill these lands, what will happen? There's no path for these rainwater to flow. Right, children? Thereby floods will occur. Right? Thereby it will cover the normal land areas with houses and other properties. Okay, children? So refilling or reclamation of lands is one human activity that causes floods. Okay, children? Here we'll underline that. Reclamation of lands or refilling lowland areas. Improper construction activities. Give me an example for improper construction activities, children. You all know that some people, without any permission, they just build houses. They just put up houses and other buildings. Sometimes they might block the drainage systems as well. So drainage systems are very important. The excess water flows through the drainage systems, right? So what will happen if we block the drainage system by a new building or by new road or something? What will happen? There's no way for the water to flow, right? Then again, because there's no way for the water to flow, even with the little rains, it overflows, right? The floods will occur, right, children? Therefore, improper construction activities is another human activity that causes floods, right? Sand mining. What is the harmful effect of sand mining, children? Now see, sometimes people have to collect sand and this is known as sand mining from the rivers for construction purposes. To make buildings, to make roads, we have to use sand. So where do we get the sand from? Most of the time people get it from the river bottoms and this is known as sand mining. right? Let's say that you all know that all the rivers finally flows into the oceans, right? So then what happens? Now, if this is the ocean and if this is the river, let's say this is the river bottom, right? So then what will happen if this is the river and if this is the river bottom? The depth of the river bottom increases when they take sand from the bottom. When more and more sand is taken away from the bottom, what will happen? The depth increases. It becomes more deep. At one point, when it becomes more and more deep, the water from these ocean areas also can flow towards the rivers. So in that case, more and more water will get collected in the rivers, and at one point, when there is too much of water, these rivers will overflow, causing floods. Right, children? So this is another human activity that causes flood, sand mining. Right? There are other actions as well. Now, another reason for this type of occurrence of floods is soil erosion. What is the meaning of soil erosion, children? Soil erosion means soil moving from one place to another place, right? Now, soil erosion is very bad because what will happen? Because of soil erosion, the topsoil layer will washed away with water. Right now, the topsoil layer is very rich in nutrients. Therefore, plants need this topsoil layer for the growth. Okay? But when water falls, when the rain falls on this topsoil layer, what happens? It's washed away with water. Right? But now what happens? If the plant cover is there, if there's more plant cover in the soil, you all know that plant roots go through the soil particles and plant roots can keep the soil particles together, right? So even if it rains, if the ground is covered with plants, if a high plant cover is there, soil erosion will be minimized, right, children? So what happens? Now when people cut down trees, which means when they remove the plant cover, the soil gets exposed to rainwater again, and therefore soil erosion will be very high. So during the rainy seasons, if the soil erosion is too high, what will happen, children? The soil will wash away with water and they will get deposited at the river bottoms. Right? They will get deposited at the river bottoms. Thereby what happens? The depth of the bottom reduces, which means the bottom comes up little by little when more and more sand gets collected at the bottom of the rivers. Right? So this causes floods. So in this case, when the depth reduces, what happens? Even with a little extra water, these rivers will overflow again, causing floods. Right, children? So soil erosion can be minimized if we do not cut down trees. So humans, we cut down trees and we clear the forest areas. When we clear the forest areas, the soil gets directly exposed with rainwater and therefore soil washes away very well. Therefore, what happens? That washed away soil gets collected in the river bottoms. Therefore, this is also another human activity. Clearing the forest or cutting down trees also somehow affects floods. Right, children? So now you understand, even though floods is a natural disaster, we also have our part to take care of. Right, children? From our side also, we can do something to minimize the effects of floods. Understand, children? Right, we'll move on to the next. Right, the next natural disaster we are going to discuss about is droughts. We'll go through this. If a certain area gets less than 75% of expected rainfall at a certain time period, a dry weather condition may occur in that area. This dry period is known as the drought. Okay, the dry period that occurs due to the lack of rain can be simply called drought. Right, children? Now we discussed about this drought condition in the heat and its effects lesson. So I hope you all remember what are the harmful effects of drought seasons. Right, water bodies dry up, soil cracking takes place, animals also die and they lose their habitats, right? Plants die because of lack of water, right? There are so many harmful effects of drought. Okay? So if a certain area does not get less than 75% of expected rainfall, there's normally, according to the climatic changes, according to the climatic patterns, there's a certain expected rainfall in a particular area. If that area does not get that required amounts of rains, less than 75%, right? We call that condition a drought. So when we consider droughts, there are two different types of droughts. What are they? Long-term droughts, right? Long-term droughts and short-term droughts. Right. Long-term and short-term droughts. So short-term droughts prevails for weeks to months, and long-term droughts prevail for months to years even. Okay, children? Right. We are going to watch a video clip on droughts now. So you watched the video. I hope you understood what are the harmful effects of drought by looking at that. The water bodies dry up, the soil cracks and all, okay? Right, we'll move on to the next. Okay, so look at this diagram. Under extra knowledge part, it's given here. Considering the annual rainfall, Sri Lanka has been divided into 4 zones. What are they? Wet zone, intermediate zone, dry zone and arid zone, right? So look at this diagram. It's given different colors. You can refer to these indicators given here, right? Blue color means intermediate zone. Green color means wet zone, right? This orange color is dry zone and yellow color is arid zone. What is the meaning of arid zone, children? Arid zone means very dry zone. Generally, in this dry zone and arid zone, the rainfall is less than that of wet zone and intermediate zones. Okay, children? So there is an expected amount of rainfall and a pattern of rainfall for all these zones. So we can't expect it to rain in the arid and dry zones just like wet zones and intermediate zones because the name is given according to the rainfall that they get. We call them dry zone and arid zone because they get less amount of rainfall than that of the other two areas. Okay, children? Right. So collecting water during the rainy season is an action that can be taken to minimize the effect of drought. If someone is living in an arid zone or dry zone, we have to expect drought seasons, right? So in that case, we should know that we have to keep water collected beforehand. This is known as pre-preparation, children, right? We have to prepare for this natural disaster. If we know that it's about to come, it's going to come because we are anyway living in that type of area where the droughts occur. So we have to be careful to be prepared to face these situations, right? So how to do that? Collecting water during the rainy seasons. We can make special tanks, water collecting tanks, right? Collecting water during the rainy season is an action that can be taken to minimize the effect of drought, okay? Ancient kings built tanks for this purpose. Today, many people make water collecting tanks. The people, specifically the people who are living in these dry zones and arid zones, okay? So to collect water during rainy seasons. What else we can do, children? Do you remember in the heat and its effects lesson, we learn about the water cycle. So the plants are very important to maintain the water cycle, right? So because plants give out water vapor, other water bodies also give out water vapor. This water vapor can make the clouds. If clouds present, we will get more rains. But if we cut down trees, what will happen, children? The amount of water vapor gets added to the atmosphere reduces. Thereby the cloud formation also reduces. If the cloud formation reduces, what happens? The precipitation or the rainfall also reduces. So thereby cutting down trees, we actually disturb the water cycle, children. So we should not do that. If we cut down trees, clear the forests, what will happen? We have to expect longer drought seasons. Right, children? Therefore, as I told you all before, we also have to do our part on minimizing the effects of these type of natural disasters. Right, children? We'll move on to the next. Right. The next topic is landslides. Right, we'll go through this. A landslide is a natural disaster related to rain. During rainy seasons, you must have seen that in the news, like different areas, they experience landslides, okay? Especially mountain or hilly areas, okay? So having continuous rain for 3 days or over 200 millimeters of rain may cause landslides, okay? Continuous rain for 3 days or over 200 millimeters, high rainfall, may cause landslides, okay? Sliding down a large amount of soil and stones in a high area with trees, creepers and everything on it to a lower area is known as a landslide. Sliding down a large amount of soil in a higher area to a lower area is known as a landslide. Right, children? So the gravity of the earth affects landslides. So landslides mostly occur in hilly areas, especially lands used by man. Right? So landslides are a natural process, but due to some human activities, landslides can occur. What are these human activities? Now, normally during a landslide, what happens? When it happens in a hilly area, the mold of soil, because of when it rains, what happens? This rainwater goes through the soil particles, and the soil particles, normally soil particles, they bound to each other tightly, right? But because when it rains heavily, continuously, what happens? These soil particles become loosened, and at one point, as a boulder, the whole amount of soil will go down towards the gravity. Right, children? So what are the human activities that cause landslides? Look at this: cultivation on slope areas. Now, just imagine if there's a slope area and if there are a lot of plants covering the slope area. Right? And these plant roots also go through the soil particles. Right? So even though this is a slope area, this type of slope area covered with a lot of plants is safe from landslides. How does that happen, children? So because soil is not directly exposed to water, right? So when it rains, what happens? Water falls onto the ground at low speed. And at the same time, the roots of these plants go through the soils, and these roots can attach the soil particles together very tightly, right? So even if it rains, most of the rain will not meet the grounds, and even if it meets the ground, what will happen? Still, these roots of the plants can keep the soil particles together with each other, right? But imagine the same area without the plant cover, right? Imagine this without the plant cover, children. Then the water directly falls on the soil, right? Falls on the ground, and if it rains heavily, what happens? The excess amounts of water will be absorbed by the soil particles. So then it makes the inner soil particles loosen with each other, and thereby soil becomes loose soil, and finally it falls down as landslide. Understand, children? So cultivation on slope areas, cutting trees, clearing forests, specifically in these slope areas, they can cause landslides, right? So actually we have to leave the slopey areas with plant cover. We have to leave them intact. We should not try to change them to make buildings and all. If we put up a house here, it's highly dangerous, children. So we have to clear the area to put up a house. If we put up a house and living in that house, what happens? Let's say that every time when it rains, the soil becomes loosened with each other, soil particles become loosened, and at one point, along with the buildings, they will fall, they will go down, right? Therefore, these type of hilly areas, we have to leave without doing anything. It's better if we can grow more and more plants to cover the slopey areas. Right, children? Okay, we are going to watch a video on these landslides. So you watched the video on landslides, and I hope it's clear now. We'll move on to the next. A landslide becomes a disaster when it occurs in a populated area, destroying lives and property. If people are not living, if there are no buildings, even if a landslide occurs, it's not destructive. It's not considered as a disaster, even if it is destructive, right? So look at this one, an occasion of a landslide. Here all this soil has come to the road, blocking the path, right? An occasion of a landslide, another occasion, you all can see there are some buildings also affected, right, children? Okay, so look at this one. Badulla, Nuwara Eliya, Kegal and Ratnapura are the districts that record more landslides, okay? These are the hilly areas. And Ratnapura are the districts that occur more landslides, right? National Building Research Organization collects data about areas where landslides occur. National Building Research Organization, right? It also gives instructions to prevent landslides and reconstruct lands that have already faced landslides. Sometimes you must have seen in certain areas, they put up these huge walls and boulders in a certain way. Have you ever seen when you go to hilly areas? Sometimes this lower part is structured in a different way with special pattern, with measures and some cement columns and all, right? That is to give them the strength to the bottom area, bottom part of this hilly part, and to prevent landslides. Okay, children? So here their web address is www.nbro, National Building Research Organization.gov.lk. Right, children? So we have to make sure before we build our houses, before we put up our other buildings, what we have to do, we have to get the permission from certain authorities. They have to recommend this place as a safe area to put up a building. Right, children? Okay. So we can't stop natural disasters such as cyclones, floods, droughts, etc. Right? But at the same time, we know that some of these disasters could occur because of human activity. So those type of activities we can definitely control, right? So what we should do is be alert about these disasters. It is our responsibility to listen to the announcements and instructions given by the media and minimize the effects of these disasters. We have to listen to the weather reports. We have to work accordingly, work collectively when there's a disaster, right? We should not act on our own. We have to listen to the instructions as well, right, children? So thereby we can minimize the ill effects of natural disasters. At the same time, we can prepare. If you have been alert about these type of different announcements, we can minimize the harmful effects, and we can also be prepared, right, children? So we have completed the lesson. Now we are going to see the summary to see what we have done so far. So the summary. Atmospheric condition at a specific place during a short time period is known as weather. Now we know that when it comes to weather and climate, even though they sound the same, they are two different things, right? Climate is the prevailing weather condition in an area for a long time period, right? The meteorological department records weather conditions and also forecast weather. Temperature, rainfall, speed of wind, and humidity are some factors that determine the weather, and also direction of the wind as well, right? Many standard instruments are used to get information about weather. You too can make some simple instruments to measure the factors that affect weather. We already learned how to make these type of instruments. I hope you all would try to make some of them, right? Right. Natural disasters such as cyclones, flood, droughts, landslides occur due to changes of weather conditions. Okay? We can minimize the effects of these natural disasters by being alert about the changes in weather and by minimizing the harmful human activities towards the environment. Right, children? So we have completed the lesson. In the next chapter, we are going to do the exercise. Like always, you have to remember before you watch the exercise chapter, you all have to do all the exercises by yourselves and write the answers by yourselves. Right, children? So when I explain the answers, you can check whether the answers you have written are correct and you can understand the lesson better.